I have the pleasure as well as honor to invite 5 of our dignitaries today on stage to do the honors with the cake cutting ceremony. May I please invite Dr. Sanjay Mandal, Dr. Ajay Mandal, Dr. Sanjay D. Bakshi, Dr. Arnab Gupta, and Dr. Manas Roy, please.
Good evening. I think we have had a very hectic day, but still not over. We have very interesting sessions now. Something a bit different, as we GI surgeons, liver transplant surgeons are working throughout the day. We have patients who are at times not very affordable. There is a monetary problem. There is always a financial issue of affordability. So, for the next session, I would like to welcome Mr. Kunal Kapoor. He is the co-founder of Keto, which is a crowdfunding organization. And we would like to have an interactive session with him as to how his crowdfunding organization or crowdfunding as such can help patients and doctors for a better future. I'd like to call upon the stage Dr. Rajneesh Singh, Dr. Sanjay D. Bakshi, Dr. Ajay Mandal, Dr. Manas Roy, and Dr. Arnab Gupta for this session. Mr. Kunal Kapoor, please. I'd like to invite Mr. Kunal Kapoor to the dais, please. It's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, firstly, for having me here and giving me time to talk about something that I'm passionate about. And I think it's a big honor for me to be in the company of such brilliant people and such wonderful doctors and people that have made such a huge difference in the world. So thank you, and I'd like to start off, first I was going to make this a session where I would address you, and I always find that that's very boring. Usually what happens is when somebody's addressing me, I prefer, listening to them in an interactive session, so I requested them if they could ask me questions instead, because I think that that's always more fun. We'll start off by playing a video. Sonia, can we just play a video?
Hi, my name is Dr. Sunil Bhatt and I'm the Director and Clinical Lead of Pediatric Hematology Oncology and Bone Marrow Transplantation at the Narayana Health City, Bangalore. I look after children who are suffering from cancers, both blood cancer as well as the solid cancers, hematological conditions or the blood disorders. Now, most of these treatments are expensive, even from the patients coming from the middle and the upper middle class, and not even the reach of the people coming from the poor socio-economic background. Crowdfunding has been really helping a lot of these patients and a lot of these children to undergo the treatments which they would have not otherwise afforded. CATO has helped us raise funds for hundreds of children and has given a new lease of life for some of the children who would not have afforded the treatments. I thank CATO for their engagement and for their contribution, their dedication in helping this cause by raising funds through the crowdfunding platform. Thank you very much.
My name is Troyden and I work in HR in Pune. In January this year, my cousin was diagnosed with a liver ailment and the condition was very serious. She was a single mother and her kids had just started working. We wanted her to get the best treatment, but the per day cost of the ICU and other expenses was just too exorbitant. She was in the ICU for more than 20 days. We had already spent more than 7 lakhs and her company insurance was exhausted. Thanks to CATO, we managed to do a crowdsourcing of funds and managed to collect close to 12 lakhs additionally to pay the medical expenses. I will strongly urge hospitals to make such facilities available to patients. Financial peace of mind is critical in such times of crisis. Thank you.
Well, thank you, truly thank you for all the support.
Hello. You want me to take the questions? Yeah, that's fine. I think crowdfunding is a very new concept, and we'd like to know how it works and how does the whole thing work?
So basically, crowdfunding, like you said, is something that started becoming popular in 2011-12 in the United States. There were a couple of platforms that came up and started doing really well. 2012 is when we started crowdfunding, and it was something that was very, very new in the country, and it took us a long time to sort of educate people that were not only raising but also people that were donating, right? And it's growing very rapidly, but it's estimated that by 2025, across the world, crowdfunding will be raising about $30 billion for social and medical needs. And Asia is going to be one of the key drivers, so India has a huge amount of potential. When crowdfunding started in 2012, so between 2013 and 17, the amount of money that was raised on the crowdfunding platforms across India was $450 million. And the World Bank said that that's just actually a drop in the ocean of what the potential of this country is, right? So it is something that has a huge amount of potential. Let me take you back to what crowdfunding is in the simplest terms, right? So supposing I'm sick today, right? And I need 1 lakh rupees for my treatment. Now, usually what happens, I dip into my insurance. If that's not enough, I dip into my savings. If that's not enough, I go and reach out to a friend or family and I take a loan. If that is not enough, I start selling assets. And because of that, it's estimated that about 7% of Indians have been pushed into poverty just because of healthcare expenses and not being able to afford it, taking loans that they can't repay, selling assets that they can never get back. So what crowdfunding does is that instead of expecting one person to pay 1 lakh rupees, it allows you to reach out to 1,000 people and say, can you contribute 100 rupees each? And for me, the way I see that is the democratization of capital. You don't need 1 lakh rupees from one person, you don't need 50,000 from 2 people, you can reach out to 1,000 people across the world and say, can you help me with 100 rupees each, right? And that's how crowdfunding works. And we might think that crowdfunding is a new concept, but actually, each one of us at some point or the other have crowdfunded in our lives, right? We may have staff in the house, that needed education or medical expenses, and we paid for it. We've got the Durga Puja and the Ganesh Chaturthi. You have these pandals that are put up, and you have societies and colonies that have festivities, and people go from door to door and collect money so that that can happen. That is crowdfunding. I remember my first brush with crowdfunding was when I was about 14. I didn't know it was crowdfunding at that point of time, of course. But there was this watchman's son in our building, and he used to play with us. And one day he was looking really upset, and we went up to him and we said, "What's going on? Why are you not playing today?" And he said, "Because I'm going to have to drop out of school." And we said, why would you have to drop out of school? He said, "Because my dad can't afford the education anymore, right?" So we said, "How much do you need this year?" He said 6,000 rupees, and we were about 14 children. We all went back home and collected 500 rupees each from our parents, and the next day he was back in school. So that really is what crowdfunding is about. It's usually happened offline, but I think what platforms like Keto are doing is bringing it online so that it becomes easier, it becomes more transparent, and it reaches out to more people.
One of the problems of India is that we have something called the Incredible India syndrome. We have access to the best medical facilities, but
Right.
we have an India and a Bharat. We have one, I think Keto bridges that gap.
Right.
That's the most important thing for healthcare, at least, crowdfunding in healthcare.
Right.
It makes best treatment available for people who can't afford it. So I think that's a terrific thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we always say at Keto is that we're trying to build a bridge between people that can help and people that need helping. We live in a world where medical technology has grown exponentially, right? But there's very few people that have access to that medical technology because, we might assume that crowdfunding is something that's only for a lower middle class person in society, but a lot of people, even from the middle class or the salaried class, if you find yourself in a situation, unfortunately, where somebody in your family has cancer or, needs an expensive surgery which costs 40, 50, 60 lakhs, it becomes very, very difficult to afford. So it's not something that is only for a certain section of society, but I think, a lot of the fundraisers on our platform, we find are people that are doing very well in life, that, are salaried, working in really good companies, but can't afford treatment because treatment sometimes can be so expensive, right?
Kunal, that's a lovely thought. I don't want to pose hard questions because you're a guest here, but it's important because I represent the association as well as doctors here. So what you're referring to possibly refers to an individual who wants to help somebody else as a donor or as a facilitator of donation, right?
Sure.
Where does a doctor come in? And where does association of surgeons like this, can they kind of help out in various other ways? Are there ways to do that?
Well, I think, that's a really important question because, so we've been, over the last couple of years, meeting doctors from across hospitals, right? And what happens very often in hospitals, and I've had conversations with multiple doctors, is that there's a lot of patients that come in for treatment but can't afford treatment. And the doctors feel really bad for them because, they're like, okay, we'll put you through to the social service or we'll put you through to, now we have the Ayushman Bharat. But sometimes that's not enough, right? And what we found is that a lot of doctors then start referring the patient to us. They're like, look, this is a genuine case. I know that this person is sick. This person is going to get treated in this hospital. This is the amount of money that the patient needs. Can you help the patient raise that money? And then we sort of kick into action and, help that patient raise that money so that you're not in a situation, even as a hospital, you have so many patients that are coming in but leaving because they can't afford that treatment. What we're trying to do is sort of make it possible for hospitals to treat as many people as possible and make it possible for doctors to refer as many patients as possible. I think that is a really sort of important link between the patient and crowdfunding.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that thought. What I was actually referring to you was that as an association, we have one aspect of it is academics and teaching. The other aspect of it, which we often don't pay too much attention to, is social service or social responsibility or whatever you want to call that. So can the association help out in any way in public awareness or other issues, partnering with the association like Keto to kind of reach out, not monetary transactions, but partnering to help out?
Yeah, I mean, I think what could really sort of also help is which I've done in a couple of hospitals, is I've gone to hospitals and been invited by doctors and, gone to the hospitals and spoken to the patients and told them the possibility of crowdfunding and that it exists, right? So that is obviously one way. The other way that we'd like to sort of build eventually, which I think is a longer route, is that we have a program called the SIP program now, which means that people are donating on a monthly basis. And if we can sort of tie up with hospitals where if there are cases that are coming from Keto, because the hospital knows that an X amount of cases are going to be coming from this organization, right? If there is a way of, I know that is monetary again, but if there is a way of making discounting that in some sort of way, right? Making that less expensive for that patient because it is being crowdfunded. So that is something that we'd like to work on, of course, over the long run. Yeah, I think mostly, what is really important is awareness. And right now, organization like Keto is mostly in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities. We'd love to go to the tier 3 cities, the smaller towns, the smaller centers. And that's where it becomes more and more important that, hospitals allow us to speak to patients or tie up and do, events so that we can educate people about the possibility of something like this.
You wouldn't mind if some of our members want to ask you questions
No,
about...
no, absolutely, please, I'd love that.
They're not going to be kind of questions of the question kind, they're more of awareness if somebody has any... this is something which I believe personally and I think as a team. So, Puneet, please.
Whether it's from the, a large private hospital asking a patient. So most of these times, when people have approached me for this, it's always a private hospital with expensive treatment.
Right.
So is it to fund that? What are we doing to actually reduce healthcare costs? We had the previous session just before this on the stapler. How many patients can we do without a stapler?
Correct.
We need to reduce the healthcare. So exactly the same patients, I tell them, you come, I'll organize the treatment for you, and they all vanish away.
Right.
So I think we need to, what Rajneesh asked was very valid. We need to address it at multiple levels.
Sure.
So
sure.
what the doctors can do, this is eventually, it's a small, it's too little for too few. And actually for that individual person, too much. So we could actually, with the same amount you collect for a single patient, I think we could give a similar value treatment to many more. So
that would be amazing. That for us would also be great because, our whole purpose really is how much impact can we make,
Absolutely.
right? It's not about treating one patient or, working with one organization or one hospital. Our idea is how many hospitals can we work with, how many patients can we help, and what is the maximum impact that we can make, right? And coming to the point that you're making is that, we are trying to create a system where if somebody comes to us and says that this is the sort of treatment that I need, we can also give them possibilities, right? That there is a hospital that can do this for much cheaper, and there is a hospital that can do it, in a way which is much more expensive. And then obviously it's the patient's discretion, where they choose to go. You can't force them to go to one hospital over the other, right? But we are trying to create systems in place where, we have those options and those are very transparent for people to see as well. I hope that answers your question though.
Yeah, partly, but I still feel if you notice the pattern of most of these are from private hospitals which are asking for this money. I think I have a basic issue about that because this is a way for them to, so when we're using a socialized system, it should, for instance, be that they could go to an All India Institute. Now we have so many in the country where they have slots available, how we can facilitate in those places, and the same, 1 crore can help with the same disease 100 times or maybe 300 times the number of patients.
Correct, I agree with you, but we are working with hospitals across the board, right? It's not just the private hospitals, but also government hospitals, also much smaller hospitals. Like I said, we are looking to go into tier 2 and tier 3 cities where the hospitals are much smaller and, the kind of monies that they ask for treatment are much lesser. So that is part of the plan, and, like you said, what is most important is to make most impact, and I would love to get your feedback on that as well, on how we can make that happen, because the more minds that get involved in this, the greater, we can make a change.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Please. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Bhalla, I'm also the outgoing president of the society.
Right.
I just wanted to understand, how does this typically work? A patient comes to you and says that he needs financial support. So how do you take it forward? Does the patient have to pay anything, number one?
Right.
And what are the timelines? I mean, suppose it's an emergency situation,
Sure.
he needs the money in a hurry, or you know, it's something which can wait, which is an elective procedure. He can obviously wait for weeks and it gives you
Sure,
enough time.
sure.
So how do you initiate the process, and how long does it take?
So there's a couple of ways that this works. Is that one is that the hospital reaches out to us and says that, look, there is this patient that's come in, and the cost of the treatment is 10 lakhs, but he has only 3-4 lakhs, and is there a way of crowdfunding 6 lakh rupees for this patient, right? In which case the hospital sends us all the documents, and those documents are uploaded. You know, a page is made, that page is shared with donors so that they know exactly what is going on. And throughout the process, we also encourage the patient in the hospital to give constant updates so that the donors know what's going on with that particular patient, right? So that is one way. The other is that the patient comes directly to the platform and starts a fundraiser, right? And uploads his documents, tells us where that treatment is going to be held, what they're going to do, you know, when is that surgery going to happen, how much time do they have for that surgery, right? So that's the other way. And what we do is typically, we have two ways of working. One is that anybody can come and upload a campaign and reach out to their friends and family. Because usually what happens is that your first network that you reach out to is your friends and family and immediate people that you know, right? So anybody can do that. The other is, what we found is that, you know, I might have friends and family that can afford to help me. But if there is a rickshaw driver, for instance, and he needs a surgery for 20 lakh rupees, he obviously doesn't have friends and family that can afford that, right? So in that case, what we do is that we help them with everything, right from creating content, to uploading that content, to advertising for them, to reaching out to as many donors across the world as possible. Because we know their immediate friends and family is not going to be able to cover that, right? So that's the two systems that we work on. The important thing, like you mentioned, is the urgency. So all the cases that actually get funded on a platform like us are the ones that are very urgent, where the need is urgent. Because as a donor, if I know that this is a surgery that's going to happen 6 months later, you know, I might be like, I'll probably donate to it later, right? But if it's a matter of life and death, and, you know, this person needs the money urgently, which is in 4 or 5 weeks, then the propensity of people to donate is much, much higher. So that is what we've seen with urgent cases. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to have people at the hospitals itself, so that as soon as the case comes, it can start in the next couple of hours, so that we don't waste any time. Because usually it is a matter of life and death, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So you don't even want to waste a day, right? So we try and get the campaign running as soon as possible.
We have a last question. Ramdeep, yes.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So liver transplants being big budget things, we've partnered multiple times with organizations like this, and crowdfunding's really been the way out, and it's brilliant. But the concern that he has raised is very serious. There are other treatments available, treatment options available in less cost government hospitals. People tend not to go there. Unfortunate bit, what happens is the people who have access to these crowdfundings very often are people who are tech savvy, well educated. They have the money. So out of 20 lakhs, maybe they have 5-7 lakhs. So unfortunately, sometimes what we have found is that the crowdfunding cases are the ones that don't get discounted much, because people think that, okay, there's a campaign going on. That's one. And second thing is that the family kind of starts expecting that most of it should come through crowdfunding.
Sure.
And last but unfortunate bit, which you can't do anything about, we have found that it's only the world is very unfair to the men. It's only the children and the women who get the crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And whenever it's men, it's like almost nothing.
Yeah,
Whereas if it's
that's
children,
true.
it happens very fast.
Absolutely.
So yes, while the inequalities in societies are addressed, I think you're doing a wonderful job. But probably it's important to also have a check where only people who really need it more get the advantage of crowdfunding, versus who has access to it through social media more. That
sure.
kind of.
But you know what also happens typically on a platform like ours is we have thousands of campaigns every day, right? And then it becomes very difficult to sort of go and if we spend time going to verify each campaign and, who can afford it and who can't and what sort of following they have and, where they come from, then we'll be spending too much time and too many resources in only doing that, right? So if there is a better way to do that, it's something that we'd love to explore. But personally, going and, sort of verifying each campaign and, that becomes something that can become very challenging.
It's a process, an excellent process in evolution, so I think we'll have to work out and iron out the
yeah, but
queries,
we'd love really to get feedback from people like you, and if you could guide us on a way that can create much more impact, because like I said earlier, we are a bridge, we are an avenue, right? I love this story. This is a friend of mine whose daughter was sitting and watching television with him during the migrant crisis. And she's 10 years old, right? And she said that, look, I don't want to just sit and watch, I want to do something. So he called me up and he said that can see her start a campaign. And she started a campaign and she raised 14 lakh rupees, right? And what I realized was that there is a lot of intent to do good, and we are just the avenue to help that intent, right? The more effective we make that avenue, the better.
Sure. So, thank you very much, Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, we'll have the inauguration now. So, shall we sit there and Dr. Ajay will call us.
Good evening, everyone. Now we are going to inaugurate our conference. So first, I would like to call President of ISG, VP Valla, please come on the dais, please. Next, I would like to call Dr. Rajneesh Singh, the Secretary of IASG. Please come on dais. And our chief guest, Mr. Kunal Kapoor, the Bollywood actor. Please come on the dais. Then I would like to call our senior surgeon and Dr. Samiran Nandi, please. Please come on the dais. Dr. Alok Banerjee, sir, please. Dr. Sanjay Devakshi, please. And finally, our secretary of this conference, Dr. Sanjay Mandal. Please be seated. I will ask Dr. Sanjay Mandal to do the opening address.
Good evening, respected dignitaries, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of all of us in Kolkata, are extremely privileged and honored to have given this opportunity to host this 32nd Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology. I'd like to welcome you all to this mega event. I'd just like to say that there's a saying that when you start with doubts, you end up with certainties. When we started this conference, planning for this conference 10 months back, there were only doubts in our minds. But I think with the overwhelming response that we see here today, those doubts are laid to rest. I would like to thank all of you here and would like to welcome you for this conference. Thank you. And I'd like to request Dr. Rajneesh Singh to give the annual report.
Good evening. Am I on? No, no problem. Where is the, yeah. Oh, 1 second. Good evening. So, I'm glad that we had a reasonable outgo at this meeting. When my president and the president-elect and the past presidents, we got together to see whether we can organize a physical conference. The people who came to our rescue were, I think, they're heroes. Dr. Sanjay Mandal, Dr. Sanjay Bakshi, and Ajay and their large team. I think they deserve a sound round of applause, because it takes 2 years to organize a conference at the bare minimum. Finances apart, logistics, and this was post-COVID. And so there was a lot of flutter in all of our hearts as to what we really can do. And to my mind, I think it's been a resounding success even on day one. So that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be presenting a small kind of report of what we've done for the last 1 year. It's a very abbreviated thing. Last year has been kind of post-COVID rebound, so activities were limited, but nevertheless we managed to conduct. We are supposed to be conducting at least 2 midterm meetings, and we had 2 of them. One of them was in SKIMS, Srinagar, which was chaired by Professor Sadaf Ali, and we had about 300 delegates, 15 faculty members. It was a resounding success. PG clinics were conducted 31st and 30th of July by AIG Hyderabad, and it was quite a success as always. And remember that people attended these meetings despite the fact that we were just at the tail end of the COVID pandemic, and we still don't know whether we are at the end of it or not. It's important to understand that we have a sectional meeting with ASI every year, and we are a section of ASI. So in March every year there is a meeting held. Okay, right. Just to apprise you that since we are a section of ASI, we so far as an organization have not had our independent existence in the tax world. We don't have our own independent PAN, and the ASI auditors have been very clear about the fact that we should now go for our independent PAN number and independent returns, and probably we'll be moving in this direction in the next 1 year. With regard to elections of the new executive members, our outgoing president is Professor VP Bhalla, and I just like to propose a vote of thanks to Dr. Bhalla for his service for the last 1 year. Our incoming president-elect is a nomination received from Dr. G.V. Rao from the AIG hospitals. This was the only nomination received. This is just a report, so we are not going to kind of right now put the baton on his shoulders. The incoming executive committee members by nomination were 4 of them. Dr. Chetan Kanthari from Mumbai, Dr. Rohit Dama from Hyderabad, Dr. Utpalanand from Patna, and Vikram Chaudhary from Mumbai. So the proposal will be more in the general body meeting. This is more of a report, and there have been no withdrawals received so far. We have total of 1,222 members right now, give or take a few. In the last 1 year, we've inducted 56 more. Somehow during the COVID pandemic, we seem to have lost out on a lot of applications. We've tried to clear that backlog, and with the help of a lot of referees who validated it on email, we managed to clear off a whole lot of them. Still a few pending. I would request please look at the emails carefully, because at least the senior members, because those emails are really valuable for us when you validate the applications. We have had a running collaboration with the Japanese Society of Gastroenterological Surgery. It has been running through the COVID pandemic also virtually, and we have shared speakers with them. So in general, the MOU was to share 2 speakers which we nominate, who go to Japan to attend the meeting, and vice versa. They nominate 2 speakers who come to us for speaking at our conference. Unfortunately, physical exchanges were not possible, and so last year 2 of us had to speak virtually, And this year as well, although we invited them physically, but they elected to be present in our conference virtually, and they'll be presenting, two faculty members from JSGS will be presenting in this meeting in the next 2 days. That's about for the report, I guess. In detail, I do have a financial summary, but I don't think that will be of much interest. So far, we are doing reasonably fine financially. In fact, that's what I was referring to when I said that we are not really kind of fulfilling our social responsibilities thus far, and we do have some of them, like it or not, apart from academic and others. And as an association, we can move forward in this direction. I'll make this available on the web page of IASG, and then if you have any questions, you can ask me directly. Thank you so much.
Now, please all us to join in lamp lighting, please. Thank you. Now, I will request Dr. VP Bhalla to please address the audience.
I think it's fine. It's coming in there. Is all right? Okay. Respected Dr. Nandi, sir, immediate past President Dr. Rabela, incoming President Dr. Sadiq Sikora, President-elect Dr. G.V. Rao, both the Sanjays, Mandal and Dibakshi, and all members of the organizing team, and not in the least, Mr. Kunal, who is so wonderfully agreed to come today to be the chief guest. All members of the organizing committee, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a great honor and privilege to be the president of the Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology. When the IASG chose me to be president, they also chose the first president from the growing numbers of GI surgeons from the armed forces. In so doing, not only did the IASG honor me, but also recognize the immense contribution made to the advancement of GI surgery in India by members of the armed forces. We are now a fraternity of about 100 plus, making up almost 8 to 10% of the total membership of the Indian Association, a membership that we are all very proud. I must take this opportunity to thank a number of people who played a role in me reaching here. My teachers and mentors from college, lots of them were from Calcutta, Dr. S.K. Sarkar, Dr. P.K. Barua. Then from All India Institute, Dr. Nandi, Dr. Piyush, Dr. Girish. They pretty much set me up. Until today, I experience their love and good wishes every day. In the organization itself, it was a pleasure to work with so many colleagues, and I can't fail to but recollect late Dr. Chandramohan, Dr. Vikram Kate, Dr. Ashok Kumar, and lately Dr. Pradeep and Dr. Supe. I thank them all for their unflinching support and sane advice. Dr. Sadiq and Dr. G.V. Rao will take over as President and President-elect, and in them I see a safe and bright future for our association. Coming out of the pandemic, the conference has been an exciting challenge. And from the initial opening, the conference is off to a grand success. Many congratulations to Dr. Sanjay Mandal, Dr. Sanjay Dibakshi, Dr. Ajay, and all members of the organizing committee. Dr. Rajneesh, our secretary, needs also a special mention because he's hardworking and he's put in, and also he's troubled all of us at odd hours of the night and day. I wish to put on record the unflinching help we got from Dr. Rebela as head of the scientific committee. Together they have put up an exciting event. And as we come out of the pandemic, we have revenge holidays and revenge shopping. And now we have our very own revenge conference. It is really so exciting to experience the joys of physical meetings with friends and colleagues from India and abroad. After what seems like ages, thank the good Lord that we can meet. Every time now when you say, till we meet again, it has a different meaning altogether. That the conference is being held in Calcutta brings back a flood of sweet memories for me personally, and I remember my number of visits to Calcutta over the years. During my student days as a student of Lamartine College, we would come here for exchange programs with the Lamartine girls in Calcutta. The biggest villain of those days were the girls' college wardens who would always play spoil sport. But I could never forget Calcutta. During college days from AFMC, it was a privilege to represent the college, and we used to come to Jesus and Mary College for intercollegiate debates. And they have this very famous shield called the Damayanti Shield, and Rajat Mukherjee, who was from Calcutta, and I carried that back to college on 2 occasions, which was a very proud moment for us. Now, the interesting thing here was that Rajat's father was a very prominent Bengali lawyer, and Rajat's mother was an Austrian lady who also happened to be the Austrian consulate in Calcutta. And the first day that we had breakfast, she served me, it was my first experience of mishti dahi. And from my face, she could make out that I liked it a lot. So for every meal thereafter, the whole family was allowed one of those kullars, but I was given 2 as a special privilege. I never forget her, and I never forget that mishti dahi. Later, I joined the Indian Air Force, and I was posted to a place called Gorakhpur, and we were flying, I was a squadron medical officer, and we were flying an aircraft called the Dakota. The Dakota is an aircraft of, some of you who might be interested in aviation, of Second World War vintage. And we had in our squadron a Dakota which had actually carried Indian VIPs to the Round Table Conference in London before independence. It was quite an aircraft, but having aged, it needed constant supervision. And it used to come of all places to Barrackpore. Barrackpore in those days had a large facility with a very large industrial X-ray machine, and the entire Dakota aircraft used to be X-rayed for fatigue and stress fractures literally. Very interestingly, it was also the first time that I was exposed to fiber optics. Because we had these huge Russian, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, Russian fibroscopes, where the technicians would use those scopes to look deep into the engines of the aircraft, even repair them without dismantling the entire machine. It left a deep impression on my mind because I had just come out of medical school and we were still debating the merits and demerits of rigid versus fiber optic endoscopy in the management of cancer esophagus. Today, it's just blown out of proportions, and what an impressive advancement we've had in the field of fiber optics. So it's great to be here in Calcutta, and I welcome and invite you all to this feast of knowledge over the next 2 days. While talking with Dr. Sanjay, Rajneesh also mentioned that he said that he wishes he had 2 years to prepare for this conference. So we have decided we will decide and pass in the EC that henceforth we will give 2 years notice to anyone who bids for the conference. This will give the center adequate time for preparation, and staying on the topic of the organization, it is as good a time as any to caution all future conference organizers that they are faced by many regulatory provisions of the GST and income tax. Recently, we've had issues with 2 of our past conferences, and hence I'm issuing this caution to all people who will organize conferences in the future. We must educate ourselves about the requirements of the tax authorities and the IASG's role and responsibility as far as putting together a conference is concerned. Towards this end, Dr. Sadiq Sikora, our president, coming in, has prepared a draft MOU which will need to be signed prior to any conference, the signatories being the organizing secretary and the IASG, laying out clearly everyone's responsibilities. These will have to be adhered to. A template for conduct of the actual conference has been prepared by Dr. Pradeep Rabela, lead scientific committee, and Dr. Vikram Kate, head of the SOPs committee. All these documents are being placed in the association website, and members' comments are most welcome and will be incorporated before final adoption of the same. These are specifics involved in maintaining accounts of conference fund to which the parent organization becomes a de facto member. The tax authorities are more vigilant now, and discrepancies can be system generated. To remain safe, a knowledgeable CA should locally be appointed from the time of account opening to the submission of the final report. There was an issue in this regard about getting a PAN for the IASG. For years, the ASI was preventing us from getting a PAN and also from registering ourselves as a society. Now, what has happened recently is, this is the thing I managed to glean from the meeting we had with them in March this year, that they are so overwhelmed by the number of income tax notices which the ASI is getting, because all of us were organizing conferences based on the ASI PAN number, that they have now, in their wisdom, taken a complete U-turn, and they have told us in no uncertain terms, please be registered as a separate society, and please get your PAN number. Efforts have now been done, and the process of getting our own registration done and our own PAN number is in hand. The minutes of the March meeting, I have requested Dr. Rajneesh to put on the website, and they will be there for all to see. There are some further areas of concern which are being acted upon. On the issue of inclusion of surgical gastroenterology in the Ayushman Bharat list of specialties, initial attempts with the good offices of Dr. V.K. Paul, Member Planning Commission did not bear fruit. Hence, a fresh approach has been made, and correspondence initiated with Secretary Health, Ministry of Health and Welfare, Family Welfare, and Mr. Sharma, who is the CEO of the National Health Mission, which controls the Ayushman Bharat. We have been verbally assured that this should not be a problem, but we have to keep our fingers crossed and wait till we finally reach a conclusion on this. The second contentious issue has been the need to include or remove or rename the specialty to truly represent a very legitimate claim on GI surgical oncology. These have been the subject of intense discussion and dialogue, both verbal and written, has been initiated with both the ASI and the National Medical Council. All the presidents and secretaries will be happy to take you through the detailed steps if anyone desires to know more about these discussions. Meanwhile, it is time to pause and honestly ask ourselves the uncomfortable question, what have we done to further our commitment to enriching our society with surgical oncology? After all, it's not just a name we are striving to change. We must look where we are coming from. If the basis is purely arising from the angle of turf war for whatever reason, then like most turf wars, it will be protracted, frustrating, and stay at status quo at the end of it all. This is the experience of life. I'm afraid some people may not like this, but in the initial round, we have not kept pace with our oncology colleagues in organizing ourselves as a society for cancer care, other than become skillful operators, which we have become by virtue of operating in the abdomen day and night. There have been feeble attempts at tumor boards. The intimate level of multidisciplinary approach, integrating GE physicians, oncophysicians, imaging consultants in radiology and nuclear medicine is lacking. In training programs, no meaningful attachments are encouraged in medical oncology, radiotherapy units, and imaging. The pure oncological meetings have taken a lead in organizing the multidisciplinary environment in their meetings and treatment of patients. Their cause, that is the cause of the surgical oncologists and the oncologists as such, is also helped by epidemiological prediction of almost a pandemic situation in the future of cancer disease burden, prompting governments and industry to support them. The message is that even if we have to lay a claim on the target of organ-specific cancer care, which should be ours, we must approach it not merely as a financial transaction between insurance companies and health-providing programs like Ayushman Bharat, but by claiming ownership of GI oncology in the meaningful contribution to the science of cancer care of GI cancer patients, and rest in the nodal position for the same as a matter of right in our own domain. Now this might sound complicated, but the issue is really very simple, and that's the issue. This has been keenly discussed in the IASG, and a number of initiatives are underway. Association with the National Cancer Grid is an initiative being headed by Dr. Sudeep Shah. The scientific committee will provide more emphasis on oncology in all our meetings, and this change has already started. And I'm aware that incoming presidents are committed to this just as much as we were. They have their own commitments also. I'm aware Dr. Sadiq is very keen to spread awareness of non-technical skills and address issues of diversity, while GB has plans in place for multi-central data collection and collaborative research under the banner of the IASG. These initiatives will take us to a new intellectual level, and I keenly look forward to the same. Finally, having watched closely our specialty over many years, almost 32 years, and general surgery for 15 years before that, I have observed that young surgeon trainees and students come in all types, and so do mentors. Then what is it that ensures that we produce a good product at the end of the production line of the GI surgical training? I have observed that irrespective of the caliber of the intake, the final product is a reflection of the teacher's capability, not only as a brilliant professional GI surgeon, but by his traits of being a good mentor. The mentorship is the difference, and that shows in the product which comes out. Normally in an address like this, you end with advice to youngsters, and my advice to youngsters is, which you are so privileged to be born into. Go out there and follow your passion and your dreams, and always strive towards excellence. But today I also want to end with a suggestion to all seniors and teachers in this audience. Even as you excel in the art of GI surgery, please develop further your arts of mentorship. There is a great need for this. Good mentors will ensure a good future for our specialty. The most challenging issues a mentor faces will be overcome by extreme understanding, persistent patience, and lots of it at times, treating trainee students with love and respect for the circumstances that they come from and the circumstances that they live in, and the work that they put in. For then only we will be able to produce a generation of GI surgeons we all deserve and the nation needs. I thank you all for giving me the privilege of being president of the most august Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology. It will be one of my most prized privileges that I will always deeply cherish. Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
Now I request Dr. Samiran Nandi please come over the dais and facilitate Dr. Bhalla with a medal. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I will request Dr. Bhalla to please facilitate Dr. Ravela with a medal.
We have had the tradition of honoring all our presidents. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, in the virtual meetings, we couldn't do that. So we have at least 3 past presidents. So Professor Avinash Supe and Professor Ramesh Adnari are not present, and we'll be honoring them and passing on their certificates to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I'll request Dr. Alok Banerjee to felicitate Professor Nandi with a bouquet and Uttara. उसके ऊपर रख दीजिए ना, उसके ऊपर रख दीजिए. Thank you, sir. Now, finally, I will request Dr. Sanjay Devakshi to felicitate Kunal Kapoor with a bouquet and Uttara. Thank you all. Now, you all are requested to join dinner after that. Dr. Sanjay,